Hello, welcome back to the L1 show. Today is November 14th, and we're doing government and security stories to start the week. I have no funny memes this week that I can think of off the top of my head.
There are no funny memes as we descend farther into chaos.
I did see a good one where it was like just a picture of a street in Detroit, and it was like things are really lighting up in Detroit, and it was just a nether portal that just appeared.
The memes are not what they used to be.
No, I think they're all gone to video. It's all like TikTok with the younger generation.
Yeah.
But I'm like, listen, I'm a person who's busy. I don't have time to watch a 30-second video. Also, what if I'm in public and I don't want to hear the sound? I just want to laugh at an image. The image format's supreme.
We should start a social media app that caters to people who wish that we could go back to like turn of the century internet.
That's called the slow web. And there's a site called NeoCities that's trying to bring it back.
Wow. Everything's already been done before, right?
It has.
And one thing that has definitely been done a lot lately is data brokering. It's a dark, horrible reality of our current world that was probably going on at the turn of the century, but not nearly as what it is now. And finally, our benevolent rulers are trying to do something about it.
Data brokers' staggering, quote-unquote, sale of sensitive info exposed an unsealed FTC filing. The data broker's motion to sanction the FTC is long on hyperbole, but short on facts.
So the FTC claims that they can prove that this company can tell almost anything about you. It can sell all of those data points, including the ones that are illegal for Facebook to use for advertising. Remember those, like race and gender and so forth. And location. It can pinpoint your location data. If it doesn't have data about you, it can get it from a host of other data brokers in its network that it works closely with. So these are just like the ultimate.
So you're saying there's no escape?
No escape at all. No opting out. And that's kind of what the FTC is bringing here.
I like how this is like our first story, and you immediately can get a place on your Level 1 bingo card.
Oh.
This is VHS rental records. Your VHS rental records are more protected than any of this information.
I think the free space should be government does something terrible.
It's always going to be a given.
Yeah.
I like how, though, that the illegal thing the data broker here has done is not the horribly invasive obvious thing, but it is using your race to advertise to you. It's like, oh, that's the specific thing that's illegal.
Once again, it always gets boiled down to this stupid identity politics rather than looking at the core of what's bad about it. Like, you don't need to bring that into it because it's already something that shouldn't exist.
I think Facebook thinks I'm a black woman. I'm not sure why, but I keep getting recommended a page that's like black women who love plants. And I'm like, well, I'm 2 or 3 of those things. I'm not sure why they think I'm black. I mean, it's fine, but.
Do you never see ads for mortgages? Because that's what they got in trouble for.
I think the reason they might think is because I love watching like hair tutorials and like, I don't know.
You got the curly hair.
Yeah. So I think that they're like, oh, okay.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I don't know anything about I don't want to perpetuate stereotypes here, but like black women who are into farming, that probably seems like a pretty small demographic, right? Because they're mostly urban.
No, not necessarily. There's a few YouTube channels out there.
A few, yeah, but how many? Well, data brokers are not the first ones to figure out how to do this. They came later to the game. They figured out that there was a business model here because the government would buy their data. But the government used to do it themselves. And they still want to be able to do a lot of that. And they want to do it without any oversight.
Lawmakers unveiled a first bill to renew controversial surveillance program. This is FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance 706, the one that Bill Barr knowingly lied to Congress when he's like, oh, we don't. It wasn't Bill Barr. That's not right. It's Comey.
Misinformation. He's
I can't remember
misinformation.
names. It's so bad. He was just like, we don't wittingly collect information. And it's just like, come on, guys.
That wittingly's doing a lot of lifting.
Yeah.
You're also misinformation. 702.
702, 706, 702. So yeah, just
read the articles because we don't know what we're talking about. We're going to do a story later about how everyone gets their news from TikTok. Don't just get your news from YouTube.
It wasn't wittingly.
Now, you should read this article for another reason, because it's interesting to see how they package this, which this whole thing is packaged in the form of, no, this is good. Because the Democratic guys here are making sure that they add safeguards to this, where you have to have a warrant. Unless you really, really need to be secret, then it's okay. Or you have to have some oversight. And again, unless you really want it to be secret, then there's options. But there's no voice saying no. There's a voice saying, yes, we do everything the same. And there's a voice saying maybe a little bit more oversight, but there's no voice saying no.
So we've split the government into two options: the hideously evil option and the merely evil option.
This image is incredible, by the way. This could be a great painting. Has kind of like the mandorla behind the head a
You
little
could
bit.
very easily make him more lizard-like and improve that.
It kind of has a zombie aesthetic.
They all do.
Dear non-human intelligences observing our race, are people like this actually our species, or is this some sort of plant from another race that's trying to destroy us?
Oh, it's the depths of humanity. That's
Well, I mean, we could argue not even based on their lizard-like appearances, but at least in the judicial branch, the decisions they make that cannot be explained by any rational person unless, of course, you are getting bribed by automakers.
Court rules automakers can record and intercept owner text messages. And if you want to be really, really just seething with rage, you should read this, because the judge said that you have to prove that you were actually harmed by this action.
I'm bewildered as like if I'm a car maker, why I would want to read your text messages, but maybe it's like, oh, they're discussing some other car brand.
They're selling it.
Yeah.
They're selling the data. Now, it says intercept, so you might be thinking to yourself, oh, if I get a text message while I'm connected in the car, I got to watch out. No. That would be great if it was that. Your car will dump your entire text message history to the car when you plug in. And they will sell that data. They'll farm it and they'll sell it. Now, I don't know anything about this. I'm just a bird lawyer, but what about, aren't they selling something of mine that I could sell? Isn't that damage?
Isn't that harm? You would think. The judge didn't think so.
What are you going to do with your data? Just keep it?
It's funny. This is also like show the actual harm with the NSA thing, and it was also proved that the NSA is spying. And then there was Snowden, and they went back, and it's like, oh, they are illegally spying, and we have the proof now. And the judge was like, you still can't move forward.
And every year they're like, no, we're going to do it again, because that FISA comes up every year.
Yeah.
Every year we make the same decision. Well, not we, but they.
Can we get the car thing as like a jury? Like, can we demand a jury trial? How do we form an organization where we demand a jury trial so that the jury is like, you're doing what now? That's not legal.
It almost seems like that whole system is set up to prevent that.
Yeah, it's weird.
And the other thing that we're worried about, at least in the government, is our chips. Of course, that's the big scare, right? Something's going to kick off in Asia, and all of a sudden we got no chips. And we don't have really a plan for that. Like, what do we do in that situation? We suffer. So maybe it's time to put some safeguards in place.
Intel in talks to build a secure enclave chip facility for defense applications. These chips would be made under cover of darkness and obfuscation.
Yeah, we'll never know anything about them, but the design here is if it kicks off, our military will be able to make their own chips for a long, protracted war.
Oh, good.
Fabulous.
Where are we going to put this? Well, a lot of people are saying, we got plenty of room in Arizona. And TSMC was like, wait a minute. That's our place.
Wasn't Intel building something in Ohio?
They were. They really should have built it in New York, but that's just me.
And the internet providers are, of course, constantly at battle with the government. And you get the same kind of arguments that we see in the previous stories, which just make no sense to anybody.
Internet providers say the FCC should not investigate broadband prices
Don't look at that.
to the tune of those nonprofit companies that when they're investigated, that we find that they've spent, they get $1 million in donations, so they've spent $997,000 on themselves instead of putting it toward the thing that you were donating to.
So now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, finally, they're investigating these broadband companies for monopolizing and for bad business practices and anti-competitiveness. Nope. More identity politics. They're investigating them for discriminating against certain users.
Appalachian Americans.
Yeah, if you're poor, they're going to charge you more, which is, annoying.
Source myself paying a ridiculous amount for internet. that doesn't suck.
And you might be part of the new tracking revolution where you not only give the automakers your text messages, but you also give some companies your entire financial transactions by doing everything through an app. And the government wants more control of that.
Consumer Finance Protection Bureau wants to regulate Venmo and Apple Cash like banks. Apparently, they didn't realize PayPal existed.
It's kind of the same story. And Apple is doing a different kind of discrimination. In this case, it's reverse discrimination. Why? Because it's cheap.
Apple reaches $25 million settlement with the DOJ for discriminating against U.S. residents during hiring. Why? U.S. residents would like to work less and be paid more. But isn't the privilege of working for Apple good enough for you?
It is if you live in a terrible place.
And you
would
desperately need that money to send back home.
You
Yeah.
want to come to the richest country in the world. That's quite a perk, isn't it? But if you're already here, you don't have that. So you might be thinking, well, this is silly. We need these people. It's good to bring them over. But what Apple did was, the rule here is that, yeah, you can have these special visas, but you have to let Americans compete with those jobs. Obviously, I mean, any lawmaker would get burned if they didn't put that in there. So Apple didn't post them, didn't put them in the usual places where they advertise jobs, and required in writing written letter to be considered. But they didn't tell anybody about that. They just quietly did the letters for the foreign applicants.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like it's premeditated and calculated evil, as I often ascribe Apple actions to.
To the tune of more than $28 million, I would say.
I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot. Like, how many, for the type of people that they're hiring, assuming that they've been working there, let's say 5 years, okay, $5 million a year. If they only hired 20 or 25 people, seems like that they would have broken even.
Generally how it works, isn't it?
Or maybe come out ahead at 25 million.
And a little bit of good news among all this horror.
Voters overwhelmingly passed car right to repair law in Maine because it's obvious. If it's this much work and headache and consternation and headache for Joe Average to get an obviously good thing passed, it's a wonder that we have a functional society. And some would argue we don't.
They
I
point
would
out,
argue we don't.
They point out that what was the previous state that was like New Hampshire or
It was another one
was it
up
Massachusetts?
north.
The car manufacturers went crazy advertising against that, and they tried to do the whole like, "Oh, this is dangerous. You're going to get stalked." And with Maine, they've kind of maybe accepted their defeat because they really cut spending. They didn't try to fight it as hard. So maybe they're giving up for now. And California is always trying to find new ways to take money from the big tech companies because it has so many of them. And one way is good for the state, but maybe not good for the city.
California wants to end Cupertino's tax deal with Apple. What's the tax deal? Sales tax. Apple considers a lot of their online sales to have sales tax, which 1% is paid to Cupertino. California is saying, no, not so fast there. We want that. That's ours.
And why do they want to give all that money just to Cupertino? Because Cupertino gives it back to them. It's a nice little deal where they get subsidies, so they rotate like a third of that back into their own pockets.
That seems unethical.
Just a bit.
Oh, we should have sorted these together.
Oh my God, bingo.
Oh, that should be on the bingo card. I don't think I have that in the list.
And Maine is also apparently fed up, not just with the automakers, but also their utility companies.
Maine considers electrifying proposal that would give the boot to corporate electric utilities. Why? Because the corporate electric utilities are not managing the grid properly and gouging the ever-loving bejesus out of customers. Allegedly.
I can believe it in Maine, especially where it gets like crazy cold.
Yeah. So,
What are you going to do? Be cold?
so now it's going to be a co-op.
Well, maybe.
Ish.
I like the energy on these signs.
This person really needs to maintain their home, though. Look at this.
No, they got to make more signs first. Gutters, not important.
I don't think that's going to make it, but I hope it does. I mean, the government could really screw up electricity. You could get in a situation where it's, like rolling blackouts just because they did something wrong or somebody stole some money. But
Like Texas?
it's already in such a bad
Yeah, it
situation.
already happens. Like, I mean, it can't get any worse. Might as well try something different.
Now, you might be wondering, based on this headline, what does this have to do with technology? Well, it turns out the customer list, which is not released, I don't know if we'll ever see it, but apparently some tech millionaires / billionaires were heavily featured, as well as every other kind of powerful human being in this area.
3 arrested for operating a high-end brothel network?
Demonetized.
Yeah, it's California. What was it? California, Boston, and somewhere else. And yeah, it seems like a lot of very, very wealthy people were caught up in this.
Now, this is crazy because, I guess it's just such a motivator, right? It makes you do stupid things. These guys actually put in all of their information, including they wanted work references. Because they weren't messing around here. There's no scrubs for this place. It was very high end. It was all Asian ladies. And these 3 guys were apparently really good at approaching attractive Asian ladies and pimping them, I guess is exactly what you would call that.
It ain't easy.
And, well, they had a nice website, which always shocks me. It's like, really? A website?
That's that people can just access from wherever. And
So strange.
But yeah, hopefully we'll find out who was doing that, because apparently a lot of politicians were part of that too. It was in the DC area. And moving over to Europe, we have just nothing but bad news about these new online safety protection type deals, both in the UK and in the European Union.
Opening Pandora's box, the UK may be planning to block encryption on digital services, fear tech groups. I would say that fear is accurate.
They've given themselves the power to do it. Will they do it?
Yes.
Almost surely. So
It's going to be like France in the 90s all over again.
they insist that there is some way to have encryption and still let the government spy on everything.
But they haven't enumerated what that is. I mean, obviously they're talking about key escrow. Yeah, that's not going to go horribly wrong.
And when it comes to arguments for this kind of thing, a sane person couldn't make that argument. A virtuous person couldn't make that argument. So who do you find to make that argument? Well, they had a list of experts that they used when they made the decision about the EU digital thing. Who was on it? They won't tell. But someone, thankfully, ferreted it out.
EU lawmakers scolded for concealing the identities of privacy-busting, content-scanning, quote-unquote experts. Turns out they weren't.
Some of them were politicians. Some of them were. Some of them did have jobs in this type of field. Several of them were high-ranking people with companies who provided these kinds of solutions.
Oh, it's not just blatant corruption. Just all of these people should be barred from any kind of public
life.
service.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say oxygen. And I was going to.
Because you've already demonstrated a level of corruption that you cannot be trusted with public office. Seems obvious.
Now, one of the horrible tendrils of this new reality in the European Union is the breaking of encryption. But another one that is perhaps overlooked has to do with the trusted security certificates in your browser and making sure that browsers no longer have any autonomy when it comes to that.
Bad eIDAS. Europe ready to intercept and spy on your encrypted HTTPS connections. Why? Because they can. They want to take over the providers for TLS certificates and force them to generate certificates in such a way that they can use their master key to decrypt all of the sessions. I'm not sure how this would get around perfect forward secrecy, but it would probably have to be a different algorithm.
So this has happened several times. Countries, rulers have done this. And when they've done this, the maintainers said, hey, we're revoking your certificate. We're taking it out of the browser because we don't trust you. We know what you're up to. These laws make it impossible for the browser makers to do that.
I really like the subheadline here of the dark ages of 2011.
Does EU law protect me from writing a program that would then modify the browser to remove the certificates? Because that seems like that would be a thing.
I'm sure there's some kind of subsection in there to cover that.
I was there in the dark ages of 2011. In the trenches.
I got to think most of the people watching were, right?
There's a really young person.
That's the whole thing. The new strategy is to go against if you're using an ad blocker and Google detects you're using an ad blocker, that's an invasion of privacy under EU law.
We should have added a story about that.
Oh wait.
Oh wait, we did. What was I gonna say?
Sorry.
I lost it.
Sorry.
Oh right, but the EU does sometimes maybe get one right. Maybe. We'll see how this plays out. But up until now, no other government has been able to do this except for China.
Apple says it expects to make App Store policy changes due to EU DMA. Gosh, you say that, and a new thought has occurred to me, which is it seems like Apple is much less resistant to these crazy things that China wants than they are the EU. It's like in the EU, it's just like, hey, we would like to be able to load applications on this computer that we own. And Apple's just like, what? I don't know. And then in China, it's like, hey, can you help us harvest some organs from this group of people? And Apple's like, can do. So I don't know. It seems weird to me.
Say the word.
Because in the EU, if you violate it, they're going to charge you like $20 million and you're going to go on with your life. If you violate China's rules, all of your people at Google China are going to go missing.
Well, they don't care about that so much as, being locked out of the Chinese market.
There are a lot more people. Google is actually going to the EU, though, and begging for regulation, which is certainly a new thing. Well, not that new, because these big giant tech companies will try to use the regulators against one another.
Google has turned to regulators to make Apple open up iMessage. Why? Because Android users don't show up as blue. They show up as green. And that's really unsettling.
But they also have to use SMS, which is pretty unreliable. I don't have good coverage at my house.
Same.
And everything else comes through the Wi-Fi just fine, but not SMS. So
fun time.
It's kind of a bad. If you recall, the EU passed these rules about core technologies. And if you have a core technology, they get to be way more involved. And so Google is saying, hey, text messages are core technology. Your bank uses it. Everybody uses it. Doctors use it.
Technically, iMessage was designed to do an end run around that by being its own thing. And because Apple has achieved incumbent monopoly status duopoly status, people are using it like the other technology, but it in fact supplants the competition.
If you're following along on the one tab, I just removed a duplicate. Got through there. And the back to the UK, bad sort.
Bad sort.
You don't get 2 squares for that, though. Selling not user data, not just user data, but seller data and advertiser data. So you engage with Amazon to sell products, or maybe you engage with Meta to buy ads and do that kind of thing. Well, they're spying on you too.
Brits make Amazon and Meta stop using third-party data to undercut rivals. So Amazon could just hire somebody to keep an eye on Walmart's prices and then say, we can charge less. Do it.
Yeah, remember they did the thing where they raised prices until it saw competitors pushing back, and then it pulled them back a little bit. So now it had the lowest price, but at a higher price point. Pretty brilliant, if evil.
Also, the idea of someone they'll hire someone to look at that. No, that's all. That's all automated.
And continues to I guess from the user's perspective, from the plebs, this is the worst thing that has happened this fall.
The Verge's headline is YouTube's ad blocking crackdown is facing a new challenge: privacy laws. How do you detect and correct for the blocking of ads? It's like, oh, well, you detect that the ad was blocked. Not so fast there.
Yeah, they shouldn't be able to have that kind of visibility on how you're using their website. They should just be sending you information, and if you decide not to consume some of that information, should you be forced to?
You will look at the ad.
This new television from RCA has this giant chromatic AdMaster 5000 that pops out of the top of the head and forces your head to be against the glass of the CRT. So you can watch the ad. Because this was brought to you by an ad. It's brought to you by the Blend Tech, what it is.
Store.level1text.com.
We would never
No.
put our ads in those places. Actually, we might.
Don't hold us to that.
All the KVMs are in stock mostly.
Yeah. Go buy KVM, please.
Tell your friends so we don't have to advertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in Canada, they also have a problem with the ISPs and monopolies. You know, they merge and things get worse, or they destroy a competitor and things get worse. What do you do about it?
After a big drop in ISP competition, Canada mandates fiber network sharing. Do you know why it's mandating fiber network sharing? Because there's no bandwidth contention on fiber. The upper limit on how much bandwidth you can get, even from just a single piece of fiber optics with modern telecommunications hardware, is astronomical. So there's no, like, they can share. Multiple ISPs can share.
Now, the big monopolist in Canada is Bell. And Bell made an announcement immediately after this and said, well, we're not going to upgrade it anymore. We're stopping everything. If we can't control it, we're not going to build it.
Yeah, that seems like, what is it? What's the behavior when a toddler like smashes their toys because they don't want to play with other children? Sociopathic behavior.
Well, for a toddler, it's like they haven't learned how to self-regulate yet.
It's also true for Bell Canada.
Yeah.
You won't self-regulate, so now Dad's going to come in and regulate.
Don't make him also regulate your network build out infrastructure. It's like, oh, we're going to stop upgrading. All right, well, we'll just do the main thing and have the government take over the infrastructure and sell the infrastructure at utility rates.
No.
Well, we got to harken back to the room temperature superconductor stuff because this is unproven and it seems unlikely.
Keep your hype at a low level.
So yeah, no hype. This has got to be a hype-free zone. But this guy claims that he's got it and he's going to announce it in an upcoming event.
Scientist claims quantum RSA 2048 encryption cracking breakthrough. Researcher says that a smartphone can now crack RSA 2048. Wow. This will be huge if true.
Also terrifying if true.
There's a lot that still has those old keys. Yeah.
It's not necessarily like quantum brute forcing like we expected to eventually do it. He claims there's a novel way of beating this particular algorithm. So, and Amazon is constantly, they're so big and it's so much money to be made that people are constantly trying to find ways to cheat them. And boy, do they find some interesting ones.
How a quote unquote refund fraud gang stole $700,000 from Amazon.
So essentially, you order a product, you ship it to me, I tell Amazon the product never arrived. Amazon issues a refund to the original scammer. I get to sell the product on eBay. Everybody wins, except Amazon.
It seems surprisingly simple.
There's other layers to it
Yeah.
to get away with it, but they figured all of them out. Also, they pointed out the real losers here are the delivery drivers who are getting dinged every time for non-delivery when they delivered perfectly.
It's not a victimless crime then. It's tragic.
Well, I mean, the victim was also Amazon. It
yeah,
raises
but it's
prices for
Amazon.
everybody. Yeah, you know. And the data brokers, both legal and illegal, know everything about us. And in some cases, that might be an actual danger to your life.
U.S. military members' personal data is being sold online by brokers. So we learned in this Axios article. There's lots of really interesting stuff in here. And it's just like, wow, I thought this was part of a data breach. Nope. This is just standard operating business practice.
It includes your deployment location. So like if they were stalking your family, maybe.
That's kind of spooky.
And 1 penny. The lowest price they could find, 1 penny per record. Really reasonable rates here. Washington, D.C. continues to suffer from the Kia boys. And the car thefts are just overwhelming them. They have to try to start thinking outside the box.
Washington, D.C. gives residents free AirTags to help track stolen cars.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hey, I would like to have an AirTag even though I don't need to put it in my car. Well, that's not how it works. They will actually oversee the installation and syncing of the app with the AirTag before you can leave. I imagine they're probably syncing it with their own devices as well.
My favorite thing about this article is how it talks about how a lot of car insurance companies are just like select star from customers where vehicle model equal Kia, and then they just send a letter to be like, we're not insuring you anymore. So
I don't blame them.
it's basically impossible to to have a Kia insured at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
A long enough timeline, it's going to get stolen.
I mean, I think that should be grounds for individuals to be able to sue Kia for the replacement cost of another vehicle. Because the assumption that you buy a car at retail and it's going to be insurable for its service lifetime is, and Kia has not handled this well, I think that should be actionable.
Almost guaranteed you've got an arbitration agreement.
Yeah.
So good luck suing anybody when
Yeah.
you buy a car.
And we have so much federal law, and federal law doesn't cover this kind of a situation. That seems unreasonable as an individual.
You mean it's an actual problem in society and they're just ignoring it?
Why would this happen?
Surely this will be fine.
We have reams and reams and reams of law, so much law that no individual can read it in their lifetime. And we have like theft of an auto is treated differently than theft of anything else worth $10,000. And this doesn't rise to the level of something where it's just like, hey, by the way, Kia, you're going to have to deal with this.
You got to find some way to insert identity politics, make anybody look at it. And Lego fans have apparently, Bricklink, is that an official Lego site?
Legos.
It's not, I don't think it's official, but you can place orders for bricks through there. So it's got some sort of like, people are doing their own models, and then it's like, yes, I want this model, and it puts in the appropriate order with Lego to get what you need.
Yeah, so you're basically building your own play sets and selling them. That makes sense. And they go for a lot of money. We know that Lego is very, very expensive, which makes this a terrible tragedy.
Lego fans told to change their passwords right now following a serious cyber attack.
Stop what you're doing and go change it right now.
So some people who had some of these really high dollar, amazing sets for sale, all of a sudden discovered that they were being sold for like a quarter of the price. But the financial information had been changed. That money was not going to them. It was stolen. And we've all heard that the internet is empty these days. It's dead. We know that Google searches return just robots. And when you go and you chat online in certain places, there's going to be mostly robots. And when it comes to who's deciding whether or not your voice can be heard, more robots.
Bad bots make up to 30% of internet traffic, and they're after APIs. So they're scanning the internet looking for things that are vulnerable, mostly.
But in fact, 50% of the internet is estimated to be robots. They just suspect that the other 20 are good.
Oh, that makes me feel fantastic.
And when it comes to your data being stolen, I mean, it happens constantly. How many times have you been dinged by your credit card? It's like, your email's on the dark web. And that's annoying, but it's probably not the worst thing in the world. But this hack is up there with worst thing that people can find out about you online.
Hackers target Las Vegas plastic surgeons and post their patient information, including naked photos, online. If you've had some work done and that was on one of these plastic surgeons' file servers, it's on the internet now. And they've been blackmailing the patients directly as well.
That's what's really messed up about it is like they sent, not only did they like just post it online, they also sent it to the contact emails and stuff of everybody who was in that database. And it's like, oh.
Pretty dark.
Yeah.
Maybe I suppose there's a medical reason to take those pictures, but can we do it without that?
I mean, I think you have to take them so that they know like where they're going to, because they mark you up and take photos for reference.
It doesn't need to be on the internet.
No, it does. That's true.
Also, I guess some of these are facial surgeries, but if it's not a facial surgery, they should cover up your head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still your body, I guess, out there.
Still weird.
But when it comes to scanning bodies, it's okay to do it in a doctor's office, not okay to do it at a Beyoncé show.
Beyonce's Cardiff gig, the crowd there was scanned for I don't even want to say that because of the algorithms.
CSAM enthusiast.
It's on BBC News.
So
It's really weird that it would be a Beyonce concert and not say the Wiggles.
well, they said that overwhelmingly the teen girls. So kind of makes sense, I guess. But it's really, I mean, they're scanning everybody to get a tiny percentage, which is.
Have you seen, this is another hot meme that I saw recently, and it was a clip of Beyonce. She gave like a graduation speech a couple years ago, but someone like cut it up so it's all messed up, and it's her like, "You are untalented, overweight, you deserve nothing." Like, it's so funny. I've watched it like 10 times, and it's like my morning affirmations now, except it's like counter affirmations. You are untalented, you are alone. Tell me, Beyonce.
Well, cybersecurity is, the big thing that we're all worried about here. And we're worried about our nation being able to defend itself against other nations as well as ourselves. But what happens when the nations get in a fight about not only whether or not they're hacking each other, but whether it's legal to protect from that hacking because of patent war?
Huawei and Tencent spearhead China's hold on cybersecurity patents. So if you're going to deal with this type of attack this way, the process or method for dealing with that might be patented.
So out of the 10 number one cybersecurity patents, I don't know who ranked them, they claim that China has 6.
Fun times.
Although in the past, China did not really care too much about patents. I don't know if we should respect that. And here's a warning for those of you who have been a part of all these Bitcoin forks. I don't even know if I have this.
This is like a warning / nothing burger. Coinbase warns Bitcoin SV holders withdraw or be liquidated. So this is Bitcoin SV. It's like Satoshi's vision, but they shut it down in 2021, and then you just kind of were expected to deal with it. And they're just saying, okay, we shut this down in 2021. You need to get your stuff, or we're just going to get rid of it. Okay.
I don't even know if I have it. I was part of all the forks though. It was kind of fun when like Bitcoin Cash just showed up. I was like, hey, look, you've got Bitcoin Cash now. We forked it.
Well, every thought in your head is dumb. Every word that comes out of your mouth is dumb.
It's true for some people.
Store.level1text.com.
I'm watching you. Bye.